So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to my talk about yourCMDB and OpenNMS. My name is Michael Batz. I'm working at a company called NetThings, which is located here in Fulda, as an OpenNMS consultant. And the last year, I spent some time in doing a project to create a tool called yourCMDB, and which is a technical database for managing devices like routers, switches, servers, but also other objects like list lines or locations. And I want to show you the story of this, the reason why I created this tool, and a live demo, and to show you how it works and how it connects to OpenNMS. Okay, these are the points we go through in the next few minutes. So if you have any questions during the talk, please ask. We can have a little discussion at this.
Can we turn off these lights or do something about it?
That's hard, I try. Ja, vorne irgendwie. Das hier? It's better, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, until 2013, we used OpenNMS to manage our devices, and also we used OpenNMS to manage in our inventory of our devices. So we store serial numbers and contracts all in the asset fields of OpenNMS, and this was part for the objects we can monitor, and we have some or more Excel sheets for storing information about other objects like locations or list lines. We have a lot of list lines. One part of our business is providing network solutions to our customers. So we have wide area networks to our customers. We rent list lines from different carriers and sell them as a solution to our customers. And I had one evening where I did support and had a customer call who had an issue about one of these list lines, and it took me 20 minutes to go through all the Excel sheets and searching for this list line. And this is the problem, or that was the point where I started thinking about having a good inventory tool. So we have these problems. We have many places for storing information, many Excel sheets, and we have the problem for managing devices that are not available or in the network, so which I can use or can store here in OpenNMS. This was the point where I thought of a solution, or where I thought of creating a solution to store such information in a technical database. We have some requirements. It should be simple to define own object types. So we have the common object types like storing information about routers, switches, servers, but we also have some list lines. That was the point where we have very different carriers where we rent list lines, and every carrier has its own information we need to store to open a ticket for this list line. So it must be easy to create own types of object there. Also should be easy to import or export objects. A search over all objects must be available. And we thought about an integration with other software. So we have this information stored in one database and want to use this information in other tools like OpenNMS or OTRS as a ticket system, or other tools like a backup software where you can use this information that is stored in this database. I looked around which solutions are available on the internet, and found some tools that might be interesting, but nothing that fitted these needs here. So I started in 2013 my own project called yourCMDB, and it's an open source inventory system released under the GPL version 3. And here's the URL or the project page to get the software and documentation. And I want to show you in the next few minutes this tool in the live demo and how it works. And then we can switch over to how it connects to OpenNMS. So this is a simple screenshot, but I switch now to the live demo to show it in action. I created a demo system. As I can't show the data we have in our production system, it's a bit hard about this. So I created the demo system. No. Okay. This is the start page, and you see here the last created objects and the last object that has changed. But we start here with the object menu. We have object types here and object types type groups. What you see here are object types groups. We have a group named devices, and we have different object types in this group, which is routers, switches, firewalls, servers. And here you see the number of the objects in this with this type. So we have 6 routers here, and let's have a look at this. Here you have a list with all the routers we have in the system. Each object has an asset ID, which is far the same as the node ID in OpenNMS. We have some fields there that summarizes this object here. And I would say let's have a look, have a deeper look on one of these objects. So just chooses this one, and here you see the view of an object that in the CMDB. We have some summary information in the top, and below we have the fields that the object has. So I scroll a little bit down. Here we have group of fields. Groups of fields, we have a group called management, where we store information about management IP, host name. We have a checkbox here for monitoring with OpenNMS. This is a checkbox we use to provide or to push objects to OpenNMS. We have a flag here, SLA 24/7, which we can use for categorizing objects for using in notifications of OpenNMS. We have even things like username and password. And we have different types of fields. This is a text field here. You simply put text in it. This is a password field. So you can't see the password at the moment, but if you click on this symbol here, you see the secret. It's not a valid password, so don't try it. We also have this type checkbox where you can just check that box. We have other types here. So for example, we have a location information about this object. So we can choose a valid location, which is an own object type there. And there are other informations like this. We have a date field there, which simply gives you a date picker if you want to edit it. Okay. When I edit this object, you see some more details. So here we have the password field. You can click on this and to generate a new password. so you don't have to think about that. And here you can choose a location which is on, also on a valid object on this tool. And we have here some date pickers for choosing dates. And this, which is a text area where you can provide more information or a description like that. Okay, let's save it. We have some special fields. These are summary fields that summarizes the object. So we have a few fields like a management IP, host name, or the model of this router, which summarizes this object. And we simply choose these fields in the configuration and say these fields summarizes this object, and these fields were written up here. We can use the information here provided in the fields for creating links. So if we click on this SSH, you see here on the button we have an SSH link which uses the management IP, or we can here have a link to OpenNMS which uses the node label or the host name. Which is pretty interesting if you use this location. So for example, here we have a location object where we provide the address and simply click on this external link to show it on Google Maps. We have a log of the objects. So everything you change in this object will be logged here. So for example, we changed the password from this to this, and you see it in the log, and you see which user it was. This time it was admin. But it is really interesting if you have some people using this tool, and you can ask them if you why they changed something in this tool. An object can have two states. It can be active or it can be inactive. So maybe you don't need the router anymore. You can set it to inactive, and it disappear from all the views. So here we have an active object which shows the A on the top. We can simply click on this checkbox here to make it an inactive object, and go. Now we have a not active object, and if you go into list, it's router 4. We can't find the object anymore in the list because it is inactive. If you click on this link here, you see the inactive objects. Okay, you can search for objects on the list here, for example, router. And you can see the search results. You can search over all fields and over all objects. And you can use some filters there. I think you know the concept from OpenNMS, where you can filter by type. So you can say, I don't want to have results with object type router. So you can remove that from the list. Now we have no search results anymore. See the filter here. Okay, that was a short live demo. Let's come back. Let's come to the topic. How does this all works behind? And some slides about that. So here, you can see the features that are implemented at the moment. You can add, edit, delete, or show objects. You can set objects to active or inactive. You can search over all fields. You can import and export objects using a CSV file. And we have some APIs. We have a REST API for connecting to other or using this in your own scripts. We have an export API, which I can tell you more in a few minutes, to export objects to external systems like OpenNMS or, for example, Ansible. There's a task scheduler, so you can provide or you can create tasks that were executed on a regular basis or on events. So if you change an object, you can execute a script or a binary. And we have 2 languages that are supported in the web UI. It's English and German. The reason is I can't speak more languages, but it's easy to create if you can speak some other language. Okay, it's written in PHP, and we have a database. We use MySQL as a database. There's a database abstraction layer, so it should be possible to use other databases like Oracle, Postgres, or something like that. It's not tested, so you only we use MySQL, so this is the version we test. But it should work on other databases too, maybe. Okay, a little bit about the architecture, how the objects are saved or are stored in the database. We have this database which saves the content of an object. So all the fields we have, like the password field and what we have seen in the last few minutes. And we have the structure that is saved in that is stored in an XML or in XML configuration files. And we have a look at the XML configuration files now, and can change the structure in an example. Okay, can you see it or can you read it? Yeah. I can show it live. Is it better to read? Not really. No?
Well, you can't see the other one at all, so.
Okay. It's better. It's a bit.
No, it's fine. The syntax on it. It's just the fact that it's folding a bit.
Yeah. But it's better than on the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
For me. I can read it, yeah.
Me too. Okay, we have an XML structure, which is we have the groups here. You see the first line, the group object type group devices, which was on the object menu. And then we have object types like router. And we have a first step, or we have a first part which stores information about links to other systems. You saw the links, the SSH links and the OpenNMS link. And after that, we have some fields there, or we have the definition of fields, which starts here with fields. And we have field groups. These are the groups you saw. We had the group management, and we have different fields here, like management IP, management hostname, and so on. So I just switch to the web UI that you can see it. This is the field group management, and you see management IP, management hostname, and so on. These are defined in this XML file. I come back to the slides, and you see the structure as whole, links and fields, field groups. And now I have a deeper look on one of the lines where a field is defined. That's bigger, I think. Yeah, that's better now. Here's the definition of a field. You have a field name. This is the unique name. This is the type of a field. a label which you can see in the web UI, and point summary field. And now we can go through all these definitions. The point name, this is the field name. That must be a unique name where this information is stored. Maximum length is 64 characters, and you can't use a few of these characters in the field name, or some strings there. We have the next point is the type. We have some different types of fields. The next slide gives you some information about which types are available. Then we have a label, and label is this text which is displayed on the web UI. So we have management IP, which is just shown here as a label. And the last part is the flag summary field. That defines if a field is summarizes an object. And if you set this to true, the content of the field will be used to create the summary information. Okay, the available data types are text, simple text field, Boolean, which simply shows a checkbox, password, which uses this password display where you click on this symbol to get the password, date with a date picker, text area, and object references, where you can have this drop-down menu to choose a reference to another object. Okay, that's a lot about the database itself. The next point is the connection to other systems or to OpenNMS. There's an export API which pushes objects to other systems, and this is organized in export tasks. You can create or define tasks that are defined in XML configuration files. And each task has a source where you can choose the CMDB objects you want to push to other systems. A destination, that is an external system where you want to push it. And you can define variables for using in exports. And I can show you that in a few on the next few slides and a little bit deeper. Oh, this way. At the moment, these are the external systems that are implemented. We want to implement more in the future. The first thing is dummy. It's just used for testing the export API. Simply prints out some information on the standard output. We have OpenNMS, where we can push objects to OpenNMS. We can push node IP, node label, the management IP, categories, surveillance categories, and asset information. There is an exporter for Ansible, for creating an Ansible inventory. And we used in our environment a tool called Plesk Automation, which is a commercial tool which has a great API for creating DNS records. So that's the reason why we implemented that. In the future, there will be some other external systems there, like OpenVAS, I think OTRS. That will be some next step. Can you read it? No? Yeah? Hmm? No? Yeah. This is the structure of the exporter, of the configuration of an exporter. We have an export task there, which has a name example, and we have here a block that defines the sources. Source is an object type. So for example, we have the object type router here. We can define a state for the objects. So we only want to export objects if they have a state active. And we can define other requirements. So for example, if the manufacturer field should be Cisco, we can define this as a condition to export objects in this task. We can use different object types as sources. The next part is the destination part, which defines the external system. Here it is dummy. I will show you an example for OpenNMS on the next slide. And each external system has some parameters which we can use or which it needs. For example, for OpenNMS, we need a user and a password for the REST API or an URL, which is configured here. Then we have a block called variables. We can create variables, for example, dummy1 here as the variable name. And we use the values from different fields. So for example, here we have the object type router, and we use the field name, we use the content of the field host name, which is the value for dummy1. For the object type switch, we use the content of the field name of the field management IP. And we can use this for the exporter. So this is the dummy configuration, which is not very interesting. I come next on the next slide. I come to configure a connection to OpenNMS. Yeah, this is just the big picture that we can CMDB objects add to OpenNMS. We can we can set an IP interface. We can one or more IP interfaces we can set. We can set up the node label. We can provide services to OpenNMS like ICMP, SNMP, and so on. We can set up asset information and surveillance categories. And for the connection, we use the OpenNMS REST API. Here you can see an example configuration. This is a minimal configuration. I have that in live too in the next few minutes. So here you can see the sources. So we use router, or we export router where the field monitoring is true. So this is the monitoring with OpenNMS checkbox you see on the web UI. And we simply want to import or export all switches. Here we have the class external system OpenNMS, which defines the external system. We need these 4 parameters: the REST URL, so the URL to the OpenNMS REST API, a username and a password, which is the default here for OpenNMS, and a requisition name where the objects are created. There are some more parameters you can use. So you can use or you can set the rescan existing flag, for example, in OpenNMS, and you can set up some services. So you can say, I want to have ICMP and SNMP on each of these nodes I want to export. I can show you this in live in the next.
At the very beginning, you said that the key in yourCMDB was the same as the node ID in
Yeah.
OpenNMS. Is it the node ID you're using, or is it the requisition unique ID for your requisition?
Here, when I export the object to OpenNMS, the asset ID I used in the yourCMDB is the foreign ID in OpenNMS.
Okay, so so the foreign ID in OpenNMS will be so you're not using the actual node number then.
No.
Right, good.
But because there are some objects I can't export to OpenNMS, like location or yeah. Okay. Here we can define some variables. There are 2 variables we have to define because OpenNMS needs a node label and one IP interface, which should be given. Don't need that, but doesn't make really sense without that. And we use the node label from router objects with the field host name and management IP from switches. And we use IP address from the management IP here. This is the minimal configuration. There are some other options we can set, and that you can see in the next slides. We can export asset information, so we can export informations from the fields that were stored as asset information in the in OpenNMS. You define such information with a variable called asset underscore and then the asset field name in OpenNMS. For example, asset city or asset city, which is simply the same as we use for node label. So you just define a field where the content is defined. You can set up a default value here. I haven't an example here, but in the slide before. Yeah.
OpenNMS uses as data type in the asset fields var character 60 or 50, I think. And you're using text fields in the database. How do you guarantee that the data types are matching? Do you truncate after 60?
Yeah. I created a mapping where we truncate this information after the maximum field length of OpenNMS. So you can set up the default value, for example, this IP address, which doesn't work, I think. You can also set up surveillance categories. So we have a category called admin, where you have the category or where you set up or assign nodes to a category called admin underscore and the field name or the content of that field. Or you can simply use the content of a field as category name. Just call a number here. And you, for example, if you use manufacturer, you can, when you have a Cisco device, just it created a category called Cisco. So that's the theory. I hope it works. No, I show you that in practice now. I set up an OpenNMS for that test. Which has one node at the moment. And this is CMDB1 at the moment. And we have I created an export configuration to export the server objects to OpenNMS. And you see here we have a checkbox here for monitoring with OpenNMS, which is checked for CMDB1. And now I will check these two boxes too, and then execute the exporter, and then we hope that it appears in OpenNMS. So just some work here. So let's say monitoring, and let's say SLA 24/7. And here we only do monitoring. Now you have all of these objects are checked by monitoring with OpenNMS. The way you can execute the exporter, there are two ways you can execute the exporter. You can use the REST API to execute an export task, or simply execute a script, which you can use as a cron job. And I will do this. First, let's have a look at the configuration. I created an export task called, oh, sorry. No. I created an export task which has the name OpenNMS. Here we have the external system created. We have REST user, the password, which you can see here. I kill the VM in the next minute. Then we have the requisition name, which is called yourCMDB server, a service definition. So we want to have the service ICMP on each of these nodes we want to create. And I set up the rescan existing flag to true. And we have node label, IP, and a few asset information set up here. And I just execute the exporter now. Did not show much output, but let's have a look at OpenNMS. And you can see 3 nodes now. Just have a look at the mail1 node. Where we have the IP address, we have a service called ICMP on it. We have some surveillance categories. Don't know if you remember, I checked the SLA 24/7 field, which is set to true here. So we can use this information for notifications. We have I set up some services here, so we can use that for the polar configuration, where if we want to have a monitoring web services or something like that. You can see the comment on the asset field, but let's have a look. Yes, it's okay. It's not the fastest VM, so. You can see the filled-in address here and some additional information like the operating system. I think that's all. Yeah, and a simple comment. If we go here to this page, we can use the link now and can simply go to the OpenNMS object or to the OpenNMS node page. Okay. That was my short talk about OpenNMS and yourCMDB. Do you have any questions or discussions? Yeah?
Is it possible to import data from external databases? Only CSV files, also databases?
At the moment, only CSV file. So you can create a CSV file and simply import that to the tool. There are no external databases at the moment connected. I don't have the requirement at the moment, but we can provide such features if there is a requirement for that.
And if I do a mass import, then the change fields will be refreshed by the name or the name of the person who did the mass import?
Yeah. Since the last version, it did.
What support is available for this?
I'm sorry?
What support is available for this?
Oh, at the moment, this is only an open source tool, which I create from my company.
Yeah, but if somebody started using it, wouldn't that thing provide support?
Yeah, I think we can provide support if there's an interest. I talked about that topic with my boss in the last few weeks, and I think we can provide the support, but it's not set up at the moment. Oh yeah.
And that QR code, where did it come from?
If you use the QR code, you come to the object.
How is it generated? Sorry.
Oh, it's a library I used. I found it's an open source library.
From it's not been converted from serial number from the asset
It uses this URL here at the moment. Oh, sorry, this one here. You can provide an own URL and use a variable for the asset ID. So we, for our system, this is the next step we want to go in our system. We want to print this QR code on devices which we give to our customer, and there's a you come to a web page. If the customer scans this code, he comes to a web page which checks if you come from outside or from inside NetThings, and if you come from outside, it simply shows up some support information, and if you come from inside, you get directly to this page here.
And you didn't think of using the PRIS for the interaction between CMDB and OpenNMS?
I suspect this predates PRIS, does it?
Does it? Yeah.
Probably. 2013 predates.
Yeah, started 2013 for this.
It predates PRIS. Because PRIS has only been around for the last year and a half.
Yeah, well, also we started 2013 with the first idea, and we started using it for managing leased lines, and then it took us maybe another year for connecting it with OpenNMS, as we did not simply write it. The most work was done to get the objects into this database. That was the most work on this project, and since a year we use it connection with OpenNMS. And our next way is to connect it to other tools. So we have a connection with Ansible, which we want to use the next few weeks to manage our servers. We have around 70 servers, and want to. We have there's an export task which creates a dynamic inventory for Ansible, which we use at the moment.
And how would you deal with multiple IP addresses from different services, different IP addresses in the system? Is it extensible?
Different IP addresses, or you can create multiple objects with the same IP address. That's not a problem. It's only a problem if you export it to other systems. So on the exporter, I check that. If I want to export it to OpenNMS, I run into an error. I run into an error if I create the same node with the same IP addresses. So I checked it. Which you can also do. You can add multiple IP addresses here. So and export it to OpenNMS, which creates multiple IP interfaces. A node with multiple IP interfaces there. Any other questions? So thank you very much for coming.
Very good.